Silo is headed into its last 2 weeks after we just had episode 8 titled Grey Goo, another very intense episode, especially at the end. I think this is one of the standout episodes of the season so far. I am really uncertain on where we were heading with Silo season 3, so only 2 episodes left. Let's get into episode 8. Starting it out with, well, we have some overarching storylines I want to get to. We'll definitely go further into these later, but this episode ends with Juliet being arrested. She's now in the cell with Robert Sims. Camille has both of them in her little cell. So I'm curious. I think this is just screaming out as if Bernard makes a big play to end out this season and maybe sacrifices himself in the process. The man can't fucking talk. I'm so sick of his voice being like, when I was chancellor, like, just get this guy a fucking lasagna or whatever the fuck you call it, man. But I think this is heading towards a Bernard sacrifice play. Maybe he does something to save Shirley, who's pregnant. Maybe Knox makes a sacrifice play, but he was kind of tied up with the Orla Kent of it all. So maybe that kind of group that had been investigating that can kind of circle back to the actual thing of what's going on, or will they just continue with their side plot? Who knows? But Juliet is behind bars, and we got to get her out of there because Juliet's the whole reason this show goes. She's the peak of this show. So I hope she's able to get out of that place soon. And even her and Sims, that'll be a cool combo, or for them to talk and whatever. But that's the big story at this hour in the Silo. Now we have actually a new developing storyline, which I'll get to too. The storyline in DC. Where the hell is this one going? Where Charlotte opts into the Silo project. Daniel and Helen say, fuck that, and they finally make out. I've been waiting for this to happen. I knew it was obvious, but it was kind of just seemed like Helen was kind of waiting for Daniel to make the move. There you go. They finally make out, but they're leaving in a helicopter away from the Silo project. So were they just the people who didn't get in there? Will they end up in the Silo? We know that Helen's Pez dispenser ends up as a thing in the Silo, so we'll have to dive into that, what really happens with those two. And then we have the boyfriend. So it was the boyfriend who killed Orla Kent. Sort of predictable in my opinion, and I think if this is the end of this storyline, this was just a major waste of time in the season. But I have to wait on that one. There's some development with Knox and his father, and there's a little bit of stuff there that's interesting. But this storyline has mostly been a snooze fest for me, in my opinion, and I'm glad it's over if this is it. But if it's not, I'm gonna keep judging this harshly and wait to see what comes of it. But I feel like this has been a major waste of time with Hank. Carla, Billings, Knox, side questing. At least we got Knox involved in this episode, and there's some different stuff happening here. But this has been a slow march to find out who killed Orla Kent, and maybe there's some details they have to smooth over in episode 9, and then these people all get in on episode 10. I don't know, but that storyline has been my favorite. A new developing storyline is Lucas, Kyle, and Kennedy now in the other Silo with Solo, and the kids. So that's a new development as well. So now we have 4 main storylines kind of coming together. They're kind of tied to the Juliet storyline of it all. But this is really shaping up to potentially have some explosive finales and some explosive last 2 episodes. I feel like it's been a slow burn this season a little bit. I come in here and say every episode's been good. There hasn't been a terrible episode in my opinion. Or there was one filler episode a couple weeks ago, but every episode has been solid, right? And now we're waiting for this big sort of what's going to happen here. Now, as someone who hasn't read the books, I'm excited to see what happens. I don't know who goes where and what happens with all that. So I'm curious to see how this all leads up, especially with Daniel and Helen. Because if we just spend all that time with them and they're just going to not even be part of the Silo, what goes on with them, there has to be something big that happens with them. So let's go into the beginning of the episode. Starting it out, we have the explanation on what happened to Lucas and Kennedy in last week's episode. So remember, they were shot at. Seemingly, we heard gunfire on the radios. Conveniently, Lucas gets shot right through his radio. Now, Silo, I feel like, has done a good job of not being so cliche, but really the one place he gets shot is through his radio, and that's why they couldn't talk through it when they were laying down on the ground, faking death. Didn't love that as an explanation, but it is what it is. Of course, he's conveniently shot. But we get to see my man Solo back. Steve Zahn, I believe, is the actor. And Solo cleaned up, bro. I like this look for Solo. He got rid of that ugly beard. I don't like that big beard on him. He cut the hair. He looks like he looks like a regular guy now. I was actually I like Solo. I feel like the appearance changed it for me. I don't know. But Solo cleaned up a little bit. Nice to see that. And he's the one who's able to fix the radio. So, the people, the little children, or I guess they're kind of teenagers who live with Solo, were obsessed with Juliet, excited to hear her voice. So that was cool to see them connect through back to the radio. Nice moment there of that sort of rekindling relationship. But we're back in DC because we spent a lot of time with Per Stenson and that kind of group, the senator and Daniel and Helen, the aide, Charlotte. It's a weird group, the doctor. It's a really weird group when you take like a step back and look at that kind of combination of people. But nonetheless, we learn about the reason the silos were built. So the silos were built to repopulate the earth. And Per Stenson is somebody that believes the end can't be stopped, only survived. Now, this is kind of cutting a little bit close to home because I remember there was that story a month or two ago about that guy who just like sold all of his properties and moved to like South America. He's like super famous and rich. So that's a little concerning for us, us people in Earth today in 2026. But I'm not sure if I believe like could the end. Well, I guess there's so many threats. Like they mentioned AI, the nano stuff's going on. Earth event, weather events. Um, I'm gonna say like I disagree with this point as a whole because if you're just acting out of like, oh, it can't be stopped, so we might as well just try and survive it, then yeah, when the actual opportunity comes, you're probably just gonna be like, oh, fuck that, like let's go to the silos. So I think the silos creates like an out of like preventing trying to actually solve the problem. It's like, oh my god, there's a nuke coming. Like, why don't we just create a nuke stopper? We have the fucking silos, so we're just gonna go to the silos. So I disagree with Per Stenson, and especially someone of his wealth. Like, I guess you can't plan for all scenarios, and I know he lists out like 5 to 7 like different threats that are out there. And Helen kind of pushes back on this too, which I really liked Helen in this episode. She's like, well, listen, bro, like you're saying all this crap. Can't you just try and stop it? Or like, you're so sure this will happen, like whatever. And he's like, it will happen. So I like the introduction to Per Stenson last episode, but this episode I was like, this guy's kind of just spewing on some bullshit. And like, I'm sure there's some I don't follow all these podcasts and stuff of like Elon Musk and all these people. I'm sure there's somebody out there who's like acting like Per Stenson in real life that they're relating this off of. But yeah, I don't know if I agree with that point of the end can't be stopped, only survived, especially with that mindset you're giving into the sort of idea that, okay, if the end is coming, fuck that, we're just gonna go to the silos. So I didn't like that part. So back in the main silo building in storyline C with Billings and Orla Kent, Knox has joined the fight. Last week he was or 2 weeks ago, I believe it was 2 weeks ago or 2 episodes ago, he was like, fuck this, I'm not helping you guys. And the last week he's like, you know what, let me try and find out what happened to my dad. They found out they basically fixed his death. He wasn't actually dead. And now he goes and talks to his dad. He's like, yo, what's good, brother? Like, I know we don't talk, but like, what were you doing for critical supply and just stealing supplies? And then he's like, I got nothing for you. Boom! Knox punches him in the face after his dad doesn't help at all. Somehow Knox's dad will be able to contribute later on after this, but maybe that's all you need sometimes, a little punch in the face. But I've enjoyed this of, Knox we get a little background on Knox, who's like been there, but he hasn't been like ever like a Superman character. So cool stuff to see that with his dad, punching your dad in the face. Not sure how many people on earth have done that ever, but there you go. So, and I thought when his dad came on the screen, I swear I thought I could see Stellan Skarsgård, but it's a different actor. I don't know if anybody else saw it. I was like, wow, they're stacking this cast. Stellan Skarsgård is here. But no, it's just some random guy. Well, it's probably not a random guy, but it's a different actor. But yeah, we'll have to table this conversation on the father. We'll get back to it in a second. So back to storyline D, which is Solo and the new crew now developing in Silo 18, I believe. I think Juliet's Silo 17. It might be switched if it is, forgive me. But Solo, they find somebody had welded themselves into where they cut off the pipeline, and it was actually Solo's mother. So super sad stuff here for Solo, who's been living alone in this silo, Solo Silo. I'm going to trip over that for sure over the last couple of weeks here. But Solo had been living in this like mystery for so long. What happened? He was a kid when it all happened, but they learned the truth. His dad basically sacrificed himself for Solo to live. His mom sacrificed herself to save the entire fucking silo and save the people from the safeguard. She was actually working on cutting off the pipeline and then the poison was leaking out. She knew that she was going to be in trouble, but she didn't want to stop, or she didn't want to just die and then everyone else died. She welded herself in, so only she would face the consequences of that. So that was pretty crazy to see that. And yeah, Solo's having a tough time with this as well. They need to move the body in order to figure out where to cut off the pipeline. He's like, give me a couple minutes, and they, or eventually we'll get to that part, I think, when they get more into that. So back with the main storyline, Bernard. So he kind of opens up. This was on the preview. He opens up about poisoning Meadows and the tough decisions he had to make. Kind of a pointless dialogue because like we kind of get that through just him like kind of having this like what's the word I'm looking for, like redemption arc sort of. It's like, oh, he didn't really like when he was the mayor and he had to make all these tough decisions when he was the head of IT. It's like, yeah, bro, we know. I don't know. I feel like this is kind of an unneeded dialogue, but it's nice to check in with Bernard, see what he's thinking at the moment, and yeah, do you feel bad for him? And like, does this help his storyline, like redemption? Yeah, you feel for him, but sad stuff where Meadows probably could have still been alive. Meadows is like the most useless character, but I don't know. I guess we're supposed to be pretty sad that he ended up making the decision to poison her, which I agree. I was curious to see where Meadows goes, but I guess whatever. So R.I.P. Meadows. We're still talking about you in season 3 here, but we'll continue on with the DC storyline where we have nano weapons. Where this is another weird conversation where it sort of just gets brought to light that they were worried about nano weapons in Iran, which is how Charlotte died. I know I had been wondering for a long time. I'm not sure what the people out there thought, but I was wondering for a long time, what's going on with Charlotte? That was like the first episode when this fucking gray cloud like shows up in her plane. What's going on here? It's nano weapons. So Iran had kind of done that, and this is fucked up because they knew that there was a chance that they were going to use the nano weapons, and they wanted to get a closer look at it because they already had an underground nuke tunnel caved out 75 miles that they were just going to deploy that to blow up the nanogram facility, but they wanted to see it in real life, so that's why they've kind of captured what they saw in Charlotte's plane, scrubbed everyone from that. Charlotte has no memory of everything. And there was a backup plan that was really just the main plan because they knew they were going to get fucked over by the nanotech. So they wanted to see how far they had come, which is fucked because Charlotte and her crew were just dead on arrival. We spent some time with her friend and the father who had done, his son passed away. People lost their lives over just trying to see that. Like the way they went about this was horrible, where you could have just killed nobody instead of killing everybody. Or killing people and trying to see where this goes. You could have just ended it there when you're blowing up the facility, but they wanted to take a look at it. So there is some shady ethics of that. I think you just get rid of the facilities and stuff like that. You don't need to test to see how far it is. I don't like that part. And of course, Helen calls this out to Charlotte's face, which causes Charlotte to have like a PTSD reaction. But once again, Helen's there telling the truth. Like Helen doesn't have any government ties. Helen doesn't feel like I feel like Daniel maybe feels like a little bit like he needs to be in a proper setting and like around the senator. Helen doesn't give a fuck, which I liked out of Helen. So good for her. And she kind of mentions this to Charlotte, and they're like, why would you bring that up? The aide's all pissed off because the aide and Charlotte have been having that little thing going back and forth, maybe a little romantic arc, I don't know. But I agree with Helen. Why are you guys being so shady and like, can we just trust the government for once, please? But I don't know. Helen spills all this, big reaction. Everyone leaves the table, and then they sit down for dinner. The next time we see them, they sit down for dinner again. But whatever. Back in Silo 718, we've learned more about Solo's mom, who had stopped the pipe by welding a cap to it, and she fought the poison with fire. So this is something that we're going to need to learn maybe for the last 2 episodes while we try and figure out the safeguard in our silo. And she gave her life to stop the poison from getting to the rest of the silo. So that's going to make Solo feel pretty good about his parents, both of them sacrificing themselves to save lives of others. Great stuff there. And of course, he's grieving them, but who wouldn't? I mean, it's pretty sad stuff. And yeah, I give him some grief for that. So back in storyline C, we have Carla, Hank, and Billings and Knox. They're moving stuff around. They're trying to figure out how they got the people who stole the supply, how they got into the supply room, how they got into critical supply. They find the door. It's just kind of like, we got to find something heavy around here, so it must be that. So they're slowly starting to peel back the layers of this mystery, and we'll get the full answer to that. I think, well, actually, I don't know the full answers, but we're going to get some more context into that as we move forward. So back in, I keep saying DC, but it's Atlanta now. I got to say that, Atlanta. So back in Atlanta, they are talking over the plans for the silos, and Per Stenson says only 100 people to start will be in each silo. So if there's 50 silos, 50 times 100 is 5,000, I believe. Yeah, that's right. So 5,000 people were saved to start, maybe. Is that a clue? It's hard to tell where we're going with this. Like I've mentioned in previous episode reviews or recaps, will this be a storyline that continues on to season 4, or did it just ended off in episode 3? Is there a tie-in? I feel like there's more to unpack with Daniel and Helen. Like, we're really just gonna end with everything. We just got introduced to Per Stenson. There's only 2 episodes left this season. I feel like this is going to be a season 4 thing as well, which I also mentioned in a previous episode. My grandma stopped watching the show because of how they were going back to the original silo. So I don't know if people are that or digging this, but we'll have to see. I like this storyline, so we'll have to see what goes on with that. And they want Daniel and Helen to join the project. After all that, driving them through traffic in a solo driving car, all the crap they pulled, the shady guy that had been following them around. I think at this point, like, I respect them for saying no, but you have to just imagine you're fucked. Like, what are they going to do? Go back and live a normal life now? Like, of course, they're going to get back involved somehow. But the question is, like, is it going to be hostile when they do? They're just going to pretend to live a normal life for a while, and then they'll be like, oh, end of the world's coming. I believe even at the beginning of the storyline, which is like the whole thing that kicks them off, they have to, like, I remember they were outside of a bar and you have to get like checked for like nuclear material. So the end of the world is coming in this society, obviously, because we end up in the silos. So I'm kind of worried about what's going to happen to Daniel and Helen. It's like, you guys said no, but like, what's the cost of that? Are you going to be pulled back in because you know about it? Are you going to be killed because you know about it? Like, I would just be like, yeah, I'll join. Do I have to stay here? It's like you would just kind of give like a tentative yes. And then if a situation does arise, you say fuck it and go with the silos. But if nothing happens, you're like, I know about the shady shit that's going on, and like, I'm just going to steer clear of that. But clearly this group of people, Per Stentz and his crew, have like means to do crazy stuff. So I'm worried about Daniel and Helen. I don't know what's going to really go on here, but we'll have to see. So Hank and Billings are able to find this door, and this door leads them right to Harwood, who had been kind of that tough cookie, back in the first episode, I believe, when Juliet's having her council meeting of like, fuck supply, I'm in the whatever, I do the mines, blah, blah, blah. And he's been kind of like a tough cookie to crack, but they confront him. He leads them right to basically their solution here, which we'll get to in a second. So yeah, Harwood, it's over, buddy. Sandy, who is a character's name that has eluded me all season, that I could never actually, if you ask me a million names, I'm not sure I would say her name is Sandy. But their whole plan now in the silo is to go to where they found the pipeline in Solo's silo, and they're going to go and do that in their silo. The only problem is Juliet realizes like instantly that this is the wrong place. Mind you, it doesn't even matter because Sandy is confronted by a judicial, which I thought this was a weird scene of like, is Sandy ratting them out? But it doesn't really make sense because Sandy's like been a part of this thing the whole time. Sandy's been vetted, been trusted. But yeah, I thought she might be working with judicial, but turns out she just got confronted, and the whole judicial gang's there. Camille's second in command, who I'm not going to name her character because I don't even know what her name is. But the whole judicial like raiders are there, and then Sandy's able to give the message over the radio to Juliet. There's a code word that she remembers, like Ralph Stentz or something, Ralph Stahl, something like that. And yeah, so that's a problem because Shirley was going down there to blow up the pipeline. And you can't do that when Judicial's right there. So bad news ahead for the main storyline, which of course leads to the end of the episode. So they ask, back in Atlanta, they all sit down for dinner again after Helen kind of caused that whole problem. And they ask him one by one, are you in or you out? So we see Helen is done. I think that was the most obvious. She's like, you guys are fucking hypocrites. And this is a great speech. I believe it's either here or when she's talking about the Charlotte mission, that I was like, oh, fuck, I'm with Helen this episode. But Helen's like, I'm done with this. I'm going to write, I'll have the story if it ever comes out, but besides that, I'm good. I got a milli. By the way, they just got a milli too, $1 million in cash. So that's pretty good. But Helen's out on the project, and yeah, like I said it before, they're not going to be out. They're going to end up involved in this thing somehow. I mean, we know that the little Pez dispenser makes it into the silos, so they will be in the silos at some point or another. It's just how do they get there, and especially after now, how do they get there? Because they both opted out. But Charlotte is in, which was a surprising one. But I think she could be convinced through the doctor, where the doctor's been like kind of this calming person to her and bringing her back to her old ways. Where like they even mentioned this to Daniel in like one of the first episodes of like you can kind of form whatever history you want. I think Daniel was like trying to lie about something. I remember, so that's a little concerning. Of like maybe the doctor was like, "Hey, you really want to join this silo project because these people definitely didn't just try and send you on a suicide mission." And it's like, what's making Charlotte so in on this? Why from what we saw of her before the crash, she was like very rebellious, very like self-interested, like not in a bad way, but like, I don't know. I'm a little questionable on why Charlotte's like so instinctively in on this. And then we have Daniel. Daniel's the question mark. We'll find out his results at the end of the episode, but honestly, I thought he might stay just because we know he likes Charlotte so much. Obviously, she's his fucking sister, but he might have a new interest involved in this, which I'm curious to kind of understand what his decision making was. We'll get to that in a second. So, wrapping up the storyline, hopefully, with Orla Kent, we find out it was the boyfriend all along. Her new boyfriend had killed her. They arrest him. We can finally move on now, hopefully. And then Billings and Hank can rejoin the crew, and Knox can rejoin the crew, and Carla can rejoin the crew and help us get out of the silo and break the safeguard. Yeah, this is kind of a weak. If this ends it, though, this is a pretty weak storyline in my opinion. It's kind of a predictable one, too, where I'm like, oh, it was the boyfriend the whole time. Who could have told you that? It's like, I don't know. There's some interesting stuff in there, like the critical supply, only 2 years left, and whatever. And then how the woman is like on the cameras twice in the same spot, or at the same time. But we never really got like the proper explanation of that. So I'm hoping maybe that's like what we're wrapping to or heading our way to now that we have the guy who actually committed the murder behind bars. Maybe Billings like goes all in on this, like puts his life on it, puts his life on the line to do this. We actually see him with his wife and kid this episode, which might be a bad sign for Billings now that I'm thinking about it moving forward. Just from like a storyline editing perspective, like has he done all he can? I don't know. I'm a little worried about maybe Billings doesn't make it out of this episode or make it out of the season. But I'm hoping we move on from that storyline. Anyways, wrapping up the Atlanta storyline. I love, I'm just fucking bad at it. Sorry. Daniel decides not to go into the silos yet. He is going to get on that helicopter with Helen, and they have some funny quips back and forth of whatever they were saying. But I'm actually really curious why Daniel didn't stay, where, it seemed like he kind of wanted to join the Iran committee. I'm trying to remember who told him to do that, if it was Helen or his sister. I think it was his sister who told him to do that. So he was like interested in the senator, and he was obviously very interested in what happens to Charlotte and the doctor, but just to abandon all that just on a whim with Helen. I guess the circumstances of like them getting brought in there is pretty rough. Of like, oh, you had a self-driving car, just drive me here, and like there's various shady techniques, and you're allowed to just walk out for free with $1 million. Like it's not the worst thing in the world. I'm just a little confused by his decision making, where like you'd think he would be in on this. But he's probably going to get roped back in somehow. So I don't know. But good for them. They make out, that's been like, usually I don't root for love too many times in shows and movies. I think it gets in the way a lot of the time. But here I'm like, let's go. We've been waiting for this. It's been built up for a while. So I'm happy for them. I hope they continue to be together before they make their ways into the silo. And ending it off with the main storyline, we of course have Juliet is arrested by Camille. Camille, of course, is talking to fucking botted ass AI voice throughout this episode. Can you feel my cortisol levels spiking? Whatever, dude. But yeah, that's the best decision, I guess, is just lock them up with Sims. So I'm hoping these two are like, Sims is like, fuck it, we're balling, or like something happens where like they're able to get out of there, or I think Bernard's gonna come in clutch, especially since he like kind of messed up with Sims a lot. So maybe he'll do something to redeem himself and they get them out of there. But hype music to end us out. 2 episodes left of Silo. It's been great watching this season. It feels the fact that this is the 8th episode already is crazy. One episode a week. It just feels like the time has flown by. But wow, we're here. So I'll give my full thoughts on the season once it ends. But I'm feeling I have a pretty good idea of where I'm going to rank the seasons. But we'll wait to see what happens at the end of this one. Some big stuff coming, I'm sure. So favorite character of this episode, I'm going to give it to Helen. I thought this was a standout Helen episode. Not really a ton of people to choose from in terms of favorite. Like this was just like a very like everyone kind of moves their plot forward. No one like did anything that I love super much besides Helen. So pretty easy. Helen favorite. Least favorite. This person has gotten least favorite every episode, and unfortunately, you're getting it again, Camille. What's the fucking point of this AI voice, man? Why are you listening to this? Where even Camille in this episode even gives up talking to AI. She's like, oh, can you just kill us all, please? Hello, lady. Like, you were chosen to be head of IT and you're like fucking up everything. It's just like, I hate that she became the villain because I mentioned this through some of my reviews, but like, I thought Camille could be so cool. And she still can be, if they get rid of the safeguard and she's just like, all right, I was talking to AI and like, here's what, maybe that's her redemption, like season 4. But at least favorite Camille, man. It's like, come on, dude. I just can't. I don't know. And there isn't a ton of choices for least favorite because we're fighting against like, I guess you could say like Per Stenson, but like he's not even that dislikable. It's just like Camille every episode. I'm like, oh, come on, Camille, stop. But she never will. So yeah, that's where we leave off Silo season 3, episode 8. Been a solid season. Can't wait to see how this wraps up in the last 2 episodes. I'll see you back here next week for episode 9, and then back here again for the week after for episode 10. Besides that, TV shows, we're in a little bit of a lull besides Silo right now. Survivor I'll be covering in a month. Besides that, there's so many freaking shows. I'd have just 5 reality shows, just reality I'm covering, and there's 5 shows airing right now. Or not covering, but watching, and I don't know what to cover, what not to cover. We'll talk about that later. But in terms of movies, you can expect some fresh, maybe actually one fresh review will be coming this weekend. I'll tease that. And then after that, we have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Long Walk, Insomnia, and Hunger Games 2023, whatever that one was called. So we're going to have a ton of movie reviews. I've got them queued up. I'm trying to get one video a day out, which is crazy right now, crazy pace, but we ball, so let's keep it moving. Sports, we'll have UFC 331 coverage when that is here. Football, we're meeting with the guys soon. Football is coming for a preseason pod to talk about our thoughts on the season, how it's going to play out, and then we'll be back week to week basis. So tons of stuff happening here in the Dubcast as always. Got an influx of subscribers this week. Appreciate everyone for that. Got a ton of hate on my TikTok for my Blue Velvet take. I gave that movie a D+. That movie sucks. Just kidding. It's not that bad, but yeah. Defend me on TikTok if you feel the need, or argue with me and get mad at me like everyone else is on TikTok. So see you guys in the next one. And as always, be easy, y'all.